Tom, John Brown's body lies moldering in his grave right here at his farm in North Elba, not far from Lake Placid in the heart of the high peaks of the Adirondacks. Today, the grave, the farm, is a state historic site that's visited by thousands of people from around the world that want to get a little closer to the legend, to the man who believed he could end slavery by arming the slaves. John Brown was born in Connecticut on May 9, 1800. After a series of business failures, Brown brought his wife and children to the Adirondacks in 1848 to support a secret settlement for runaway slaves. The farming settlement was called Timbuktu, and the Browns lived in this small, drafty farmhouse and showed the newcomers how to hunt and farm the land. But the settlement failed due to the harsh winters and short growing seasons of the Adirondacks. But Brown continued to live here and to participate in anti-slavery movements, even taking up arms when he thought necessary. Brown, his sons, and a band of loyal followers, both black and white, traveled to wherever the struggle took them, finally ending up at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. They'd hatched a plot to seize the federal armory, to take the weapons stored there with hopes of arming Southern slaves so they might overcome their masters. But the plan didn't work. Brown and his 16 followers held out for 36 bloody hours before the armory was stormed by a company of U.S. Marines, capturing a wounded John Brown and those of his men who hadn't been killed in the siege. Brown was tried and convicted of murder, conspiracy, and treason. He was sentenced to death by hanging, which was carried out on December 2, 1859. The body was turned over to his wife, who brought it back to their Adirondack farm for burial. But for many, the failure at Harper's Ferry was a seed planted in the fertile soil of freedom that would soon blossom into the Civil War. Today, John Brown's legacy is kind of a mixed bag. You see, the Northerners have always thought of John Brown as a hero, while the Southerners, not so much. They saw John Brown as a real troublemaker, bent on changing their way of life, which up to the Civil War was going along just fine. Thank you very much.
But I think there's a change in the attitude of people. There's more of an acknowledgement about the ugliness of our nation's past with respect to slavery. There is a more of an opening up in terms of race across cultures. And in a context like that, John Brown is going to be looked at in a more fair light.
And that's why on John Brown's birthday in May, a growing number of people from all walks of life gather at the John Brown Farm in North Elba, just outside of Lake Placid, including Louis DeCaro, an author of 4 books on John Brown, a college professor, and the keynote speaker today, whose writings and teachings are bringing a brighter and more focused light on the legendary abolitionist.
I think that the reason he's important, one of the reasons he's important, is because he really, for people who are understanding the real problems of race, racism, systemic injustice in our country, we need to find people that we can connect with that really manifest the better qualities and that are consistently that way. And so John Brown is really one who stands really squarely on the right side of history as far as we can see now. I mean, even some of our heroes who are often lauded as being progressive people really were privately racist, though they may have been anti-slavery. So when you get somebody like John Brown, he was at the kitchen table the same way he was in Harper's Ferry. He was consistent about equality.
John Brown's body is probably done moldering by now, but what remains is the lingering controversy. Does the end always justify the means? Novelist Bruce Olds calls John Brown fanatical, monomaniacal, a zealot, and psychologically unbalanced. But biographer Stephen B. Oates has described John Brown as maligned as a demented dreamer, but in fact one of the most perceptive beings of his generation. Well, Maybe a trip to the John Brown farm here in North Elba, in the heart of the Adirondack Mountains, is exactly what you need in order to make up your mind. For Mountain Lake Journal, I'm Derek Muirden at the John Brown State Historic Site in North Elba, New York.